In this type of climate, one of the main things we see is the cold weather driving microcondensation.
In Chapter 1 of this series, you got an introduction to the 7 principles of healthy housing. And just a quick review. A healthy house is one that's kept dry, clean, ventilated, contaminant-free, pest-free, safe, and maintained. You also saw that factors contributing to unhealthy housing can be obvious, like pest infestation, or invisible, like radon gas that can seep into basements. Different climates in the U.S. also mean that there are different building codes and construction practices throughout the country. For instance, you rarely see basements in warmer climates. Many homes are built on poured concrete pads. But in the North, Northeast, and Midwest, foundations go deep into the ground for structural stability. So it's not uncommon to see basements or crawl spaces. These variables in home construction mean that different unhealthy conditions may predominate. Here's an example. If it's only 20 degrees outside, you're not likely going to open up the window if you need fresh air or ventilation. You'd lose all your heat. So northern climate homes have challenges with indoor air quality and ventilation during the winter months. In the south, extreme summertime humidity brings its own problems. Opening the windows can actually saturate the indoor atmosphere, and too much of that moisture can lead to mold and mildew. Let's see what problems are common in northern climates.
In this type of climate, one of the main things we see is the cold weather driving microcondensation. We have a cold outdoor environment and we have a warm indoor environment. So the warm, moist air just from us exhaling or from the cooking and showering activities, if that warm air isn't vented out of the house, it's going to condense.
In climates where winter temperatures can dip below zero, homeowners will often try to warm up their homes without turning up the heat, and that can lead to problems.
In order to make their house warm, they had covered up all the exhaust vents in the attic, and it was actually raining in the attic. They thought they had a roof leak, but the water was hitting the cold roof and condensing inside the attic.
Too much indoor moisture compromises at least 2 healthy home principles: ventilation and dryness.
Mold is a respiratory irritant, so even if you don't have asthma, if there's enough mold in your environment, you can start having cold symptoms or allergy symptoms that are really being driven by the mold. A lot of our basements will have mold in them, and we have because water naturally will move through concrete, and if people have built out their basements, so they have sheetrock touching those concrete walls or they have carpet, they're creating havens for moisture condensation.
Tom Neltner and Sam Green are healthy home specialists.
Don't trip on that. Yeah.
They're evaluating this bungalow-style home built in the 1920s. The house is owned by a young couple with 2-year-old twins and a dog. The evaluation begins on the exterior of the home, where they're looking for adequate slope and grading so water will drain away from the foundation.
Yeah, when the water comes down here, it's going to go behind here into that well. And that's good to have it covered, but you'd want this tucked underneath the siding so that it doesn't drain into that well. Keeps it dry.
Right.
As they look at the gutters, they notice they're clogged with leaves and the downspout extender needs adjustment.
Every foot that you can get it away makes a big difference. 3 feet is a nice amount, and this has got nice drainage away.
So a huge tree that's just losing its leaves every fall, and that just tends to accumulate in the gutters. So that's really not going to allow easy drainage, and you just tend to get this almost like a real dense wet mulch that just sits up there.
That's the hardest part of owning a home, isn't it? Cleaning the gutters out.
They notice a broken window pane.
Obviously, especially from an energy standpoint and a safety standpoint, we want to make sure that there is no jagged glass or glass missing. So they tried to block that with a towel.
Why don't we look over here?
Okay.
Okay, so this one we've got a problem. So, nice railing. It's better if it's setting up firm against up there. So, what do you think caused all that concrete to fall apart like that?
You know, I'm not sure. It looks a little too violent for it just to be like a natural erosion. It almost seems like either this wasn't anchored correctly the first time, but it looks like it took a chunk with it. So this to me looks like some type of impact. This is really unsafe.
Absolutely.
So we really have, besides the fall protection off the side of the stoop, it's really unsafe going up and down. All this loose rock, anyone could lose their footing, especially add a little water or ice into that mix. So this needs to be addressed a lot sooner than later.
Because of the age of the house, lead paint was likely used on the window trim. One telltale sign is the alligator appearance the paint takes on when it deteriorates.
And windows tend to be more likely to have lead-based paint.
Exactly.
The amount of lead used in them was higher, and it's more likely to be in worse condition because it's so hard to maintain.
Exactly. And then the constant motion up and down, then it actually will shake the dust off. You get this high kind of rate where materials are rubbing against each other and creating that dust.
And you can always imagine what that trough in there looks like. When it comes to kids getting lead poisoned, windows are the biggest source.
Here's an example of what Tom Neltner's talking about. This pacifier was found on a windowsill where there was chipping lead paint and likely lead dust, microscopic and toxic. Lead dust can also collect outdoors on the ground adjacent to a home.
Looks like some bare soil out here, Tom.
Yeah, whenever you have a dog, it's hard to keep grass growing. But that bare soil may be contaminated with lead from the house where the paint was peeling off over the years, got into the soil, and then kids play around soil, and then they get that into their mouths, they eat it, and then they can get lead poisoning.
It looks like a pretty steep stairway heading upstairs, Tom, and the handrail is disconnected.
Handrail's disconnected. As I understand it, a child's fallen twice down these stairs. It's so steep. You know, when you're going down the stairs, you don't always have the right hand available, so it's always good to put two handrails up. It just makes it a lot safer.
When a room is built directly under the roofline like this, insulation and ventilation are important considerations. Fortunately, there's an adequate heat source from this hot air supply. Unfortunately, the duct is filled with dust and debris which circulates in the room when the heat kicks on.
Constant exposure to the pet dander can trigger asthma attacks in kids who have asthma.
Yeah, it
So
definitely needs to be maintained.
Gotta keep those clean.
It looks like we have some water damage from previous. It looks like they have some water stains on the window.
Well, let me check it. It looks like the water down here on this hardboard. It's an old house, so this probably happened a long time ago. They may have replaced the window, and so I would normally hear that beeping.
Okay.
So this is dried out, but the next time it gets wet, that's going to end up having mold grow very quickly to it, and mold triggers an asthma attack.
Well, it looks like this is the condensation buildup when it's on that inside pane of glass. And what we mean by that is just when there's a lot of humidity in the air, that vapor will just condense. It creates water on the inside.
Too much condensation can encourage mold growth on the window's wood frame and indicates a lack of ventilation. Homeowners who use humidifiers during winter need to make sure they're not creating too much indoor moisture. Controlling humidity is always a challenge in bathrooms, so Sam checks for leaks around the fixtures and tub. The sealant around tubs breaks down over time. If it's not replaced, water gets behind the walls and causes mold. A good exhaust fan is essential, and a simple test is to place tissue over the fan when it's running. And if the tissue holds, the fan's doing its job. Kitchens are another area that need adequate ventilation.
Looks like they have a ceiling fan, Tom. That's good.
It's always good to move the air around, but we want to make sure we don't have contaminants in the air.
Exactly.
Let's check the stove.
This machine actually is, it's a combustion analyzer. Sometimes you can call them a multi-gas meter. What it's doing is it's drawing in the air from this section right up front, and then so we can put this right in the path of the exhaust from a furnace or from a oven, and it's designed to just detect what is in the makeup of the exhaust. How high is the oxygen level? How high is the carbon dioxide level? The carbon monoxide level? And then a general efficiency and temperatures.
But we're at 100 parts per million now in just a few minutes.
Exactly. So that's coming into this air and there's nothing to vent it out.
So it could go up to 400 and then it'll eventually back down, but during that time you've got some pretty high levels of carbon monoxide
That's
in here.
exactly right.
And you always want to have an alarm in the kitchen just in case something goes wrong.
Because natural gas is the primary energy source on this home, Sam and Tom head downstairs to examine the furnace.
Now we can take a look at their furnace and water heater.
They'll check to make sure the metal flue's intact and safely exhausting gases such as carbon monoxide outside the home. And they'll see if there's a supply of fresh air coming into the area. They check the furnace filter to see if it's clean.
Take a look at that. That's just dust. Normally, it's whiter, and now it's dirty on both sides.
Well, I think they actually had this in backwards, if I'm not mistaken. Usually the spot with the bracing is on the fan side.
A dirty furnace filter is easy to replace. The bigger task here is dealing with all the clutter. Dozens of boxes and bags create trip hazards, making it difficult to maneuver through the space. This environment also provides great hiding spaces for pests. Amidst the clutter in the laundry room, Tom finds an old crib. Cribs should be checked for lead paint.
While cribs, if they're old, can be wonderful antiques and can bring back memories of how it was for you growing up, it's a danger if the old crib isn't designed to the latest standard. So it's important to make sure that the cribs meet the latest standards and to be careful about reusing old cribs. And finally, we see cloth, rags, clothing on the ground. And concrete is like a sponge, and it wicks up moisture from underground and brings it into the house, and this will get wet over time. And that moisture will create mold, a musty smell. It could also be a place for cockroaches and mice to take hold because they would love that dampness. That's the best place for them. So you want to pick this stuff off the concrete. Concrete is not impervious. It's a sponge.
That wraps up this home's evaluation. Tom and Sam checked all the rooms. Only the major problem areas have been pointed out. From the outside, this looks like a quaint and cozy bungalow, but a closer inspection has revealed a number of unhealthy and unsafe conditions.
And in the house, if I had to identify one big problem on the whole house, it would be safety. Electrical outlets where the covers were off that kids could get into, circuits that were pulled, smoke alarms that were disconnected. But as you move up the stairs, there was this very steep stairs and only one handrail, and that handrail wasn't in place.
A lot of the things, especially on the exterior, there's a lot of issues with water control and drainage to try to keep the home dry. There was a lot of things related to humidity on the inside of the house as well. So I'd say keep it dry was one of the main healthy homes principles that was neglected in this house for sure.
I'm going to grade this house as a D. Structurally, it's in good shape. It's an 85-year-old house, but it's had some upgrades. But what's happened in the past few years is the maintenance, the cleaning, all the things that take a house and keep it in good condition are not being done. So we've got lots of safety problems, we've got peeling paint, we've got some carbon monoxide issues. So the way it's being managed for the past 5 years is the reason for a D.
What the evaluators found in this house is far from a worst-case scenario, but you could see where just one hazard could lead to a potential injury. Here's a quick review of what they found in this house. Full gutters can cause water to penetrate the foundation instead of funneling it away. Excess indoor humidity can lead to mold. Accumulated pet fur, dust, and debris can trigger asthma attacks. No exhaust fan in the kitchen means moisture and gases can't vent safely outdoors. Clutter is a trip hazard. Broken handrails inside and out are unsafe. These safety problems are fixable, but they haven't been repaired.
It would be wonderful if people that want to have a home, they want to own a home, they want to live in a home, were also willing to say, I would like to also learn how to maintain this home correctly.
When people buy a house like this or they rent a house, it doesn't come with an owner's manual. So they don't know what to do. And you think a home's going to take care of itself, but it isn't.
Hopefully, by seeing what the evaluators see, it sharpened your own eye in spotting unhealthy housing conditions. And in the next chapter, we're going to go a little bit wider and deeper with this whole thing by checking out an apartment building.